I just think the little countdown is so cool.
In all honesty, like the countdown once it gets to 1, they actually should have an animation of a rocket taking off. That would be awesome.
That would be pretty cool.
So
I'd be looking at it and I'd be going,
welcome everybody to another morning rant. I took the day off yesterday because I felt like a bag of smashed assholes.
oh my God.
There's an image for you. I wonder if they I wonder if they have that on This Is Why I'm Broke Yet.
I don't know.
One of these times, oh my god, one of these times you and I need to get on that site while we're doing a live stream and just show these people what is on that site because holy crap.
Yeah.
Um so today we are obviously on YouTube. Yesterday we were on YouTube and Facebook to no, not yesterday, day before yesterday. And today we are on YouTube and Twitter. And I don't know what it actually looks like on Twitter. And I think that's what Chad's checking out right now. We're trying a bunch of different new things just to see where we can attract the biggest audience, because we obviously want to bring people over to the YouTube channel, have them subscribe, hit the button or hit the bell for notifications and hit the thumbs up, all that good stuff. We just want more people to join the conversation is basically what it is. I mean, it's not necessarily about, building subscribers. We want with subscribers, I think comes more people to join in the conversation, and I think that's always my goal.
So
So
on your Twitter, literally, like it's got the description, I think,
yeah,
but it's the little screen that we're watching right now.
it's the what do you mean?
Like me and you side by side, and the little blue banner across the bottom.
Yeah.
That's what it looks like on Twitter.
Oh, okay. So I mean, that's what or when I was watching it back on Facebook yesterday, that's kind of what it looked like too.
Yeah.
Um so yeah, I mean, it's cool that a service like Restream or StreamYard or any of those allow you to broadcast to multiple locations.
Yeah.
Um, I think at one point maybe we'll broadcast back on Twitch because that might be fun.
Yeah.
See what kind of audience we can get over there, because I don't go live over there much anymore. But so I know that this a lot of people hear this and they're like, well, they keep talking about it and not doing anything about it. But as far as I can tell, it does in fact look like TikTok will be banned in the US within probably the end of the month, maybe. It's circulating in the House and the Senate right now, and it's and I know that I'm the one out of you, me, and Amanda. I know I'm the one that's on social media and on the internet the most throughout the
Yeah.
day, because you guys actually have lives. Um, But I think it's fascinating to me, and I always say this, that whether it's me and Amanda, me solo or all three of us, I think what I find most fascinating is seeing hu- how humans react to certain things that happen in their environment. But I think for me, watching how people react to the internet and social media is probably the most fascinating, because and I've said this in other, videos or streams, when the internet was introduced to us kind of as a largely public thing, back when we were kids, the whole premise of it that was pitched to us was that it would allow us to talk to people that we otherwise wouldn't be able to talk to, meaning people in other states, people in other countries, and it would open up the world to us. But I think it closed us off to being willing to be in the same physical space as each other for the most part. Because I don't, and that's not to say that people don't get into the same physical space as one another, but I don't think that they have the ability anymore to know how to function in those spaces when there is, more than a few people. And like, and I've told this story before too. My cousin, who is now 23 or 24, I remember my grandfather telling me that she and one of her friends went over to my grandfather's house, and they were sitting at the kitchen table or kitchen counter because it was a stationary thing. Um, it's weird how we, differentiate kitchen counter, kitchen table. I don't know, tangent. Um, that's just how I roll. Fuck you. Um, but the one thing that I think fascinated my grandfather, obviously, because he was around in the time where the only ways to interact were the phone, where you had to get a hold of the operator before you could talk to somebody. And beyond that, you had to send mail through the US Postal Service. So he's telling me this story. My cousin and her friend are sitting at his kitchen counter, and they're not talking like verbally like you and me. They're texting back and forth, and they're less than a foot apart.
Yeah, I've seen that a lot.
And like, I've never seen it happen. I've never seen it happen, but just to picture that, you know how in the old cartoons we used to watch, you'd there would be two characters, and then there'd be a third character that would come up to the two characters and just crash their heads together.
Yeah.
That's kind of how I imagine I would react if I saw two humans talking to each other but not talking to each other. And it's like, you guys are literally a foot apart. Use your words that are, that come out of your mouth instead of sitting there talking or texting.
So my wife's grandpa, that you know, the one that passed away back in August,
Uh-huh.
he had gotten remarried after his first wife passed away, and the woman he married, her son lives with her.
Uh-huh.
So they all three would be in the living room, you know, two of them in their recliner, the other one on the couch, and they all have their laptops. And they're sitting there messaging each other through the computer. And I'm like my wife was telling me about this, and I said, they're in the same room. I could understand it if like her grandpa was in the living room and her grandpa was in his office and
Yeah.
the woman he remarried was in the bedroom. I could
Right.
understand that, but I was like, they're in the same room. Like, it don't make no sense to me.
Hi, Brett. Um, the other thing that gets me, and I don't believe I've ever done this, but I've heard of it happening, where all of you will be in the same house. You won't be talking to each other. You'll be in different parts of the house. Instead of what we grew up with, where somebody will yell from another room to get your attention, they'll text you. And it's only because kids nowadays don't respond to verbal commands.
See,
And I know you as a parent, as I mean, in the short time that I've known you, I know you as a parent would not even that wouldn't fly with you as
uh,
far as Adriana.
no, I mean, she's not even getting a cell phone for a while.
I didn't my first cell phone, I wasn't or my mom didn't let me get my first cell phone until I had my first job, which I was 14, but
I always said that I wasn't getting a cell phone unless somebody got it for me
yeah.
because my brother, he got a cricket phone and he had so much trouble with it. Now, this was back in the old days when it was free nights and weekends. So you're
Call
like,
me after 9.
yeah, yeah. And
Yeah,
don't text me because I ain't paying a quarter for it.
right.
But um, I saw the trouble he had with the different services and stuff,
Uh-huh.
and I said, I'm not getting a phone unless somebody buys one for me. Well, Courtney got me one for Christmas when I was 24. It's the first cell phone I ever had.
Right, I remember
24
that
years old.
story.
So I've had one ever since, but
Mhm.
I still like I'll text people,
Mhm.
but I prefer to just call them.
And I don't know that this necessarily applied to you, but I remember being in high school and obviously we'd be talking to our friends all throughout the day, and if for me, I've never ne- I've never really necessarily been a fan of being on the phone. Um so the nonverbal communication is fine with me. But I remember the one thing I loved when I was a teenager in middle school and high school is I'd get home from school, get my homework done maybe once a month. I hated homework. It sucked. But I would get home, I'd get my stuff done, and then all of a sudden, once we finally got internet at the house, I would get on AOL Instant Messenger and I would talk to my friends on that. Now that fascinated me. Like I loved that experience. Um, but I think the benefit of it, I was able to disconnect myself from it and go do something else. Like I wasn't constantly dialed into it and glued to it. Um, and it just seems like today too many kids are, and I don't want to get too off on a tangent, you know, from what we're talking about. But as I said, and obviously people can tell if they look at the lineup of episodes we've done so far. I didn't do an episode yesterday because I just wasn't feeling well. But I, I got to thinking the other day that with the looming possibility that TikTok does get banned here in the US, and I do think that there are legitimate reasons for it to happen. We There are too many to go into that people would probably disagree with, but there are enough reasons out there to justify getting rid of it. But from your perspective, both as a parent and from what you see as far as interpersonal communication between kids when you're at a school. Do you think that the outrage and the meltdowns that we're seeing with the potential of TikTok going away is because kids don't know what finding purpose means? Like, I think even if it wasn't directly stated to us in that way, I think we understood I think we had a better understanding of finding purpose when we were kids versus what the kids today have. I don't think kids today have an understanding of what finding purpose means.
Yeah, I don't think they understand what it means to not just have your phone in your hand.
Mhm.
Because no, I didn't see it yesterday because um, I was at an intermediate school, and it was only fifth and sixth graders. But especially when I'm in schools with the older kids, they're in line waiting to get their pictures made,
Yeah.
but the whole time they're like this, and I have to sit there and I'm like, "Come on up here, it's time to get your picture." And then they'll get up to the camera, and then they pull their camera up on their phone and start fixing their hair and stuff. And I'm sitting there going, "You just was in line on your phone for 10 minutes. Why don't you have this stuff done?" And then they'll be talking to each other, but they're not looking at each other, and they're on their phone like this the whole time they're talking. And I'm like, "You're you're doing two conversations at one time.
Yeah.
Like you're on Messenger typing while you're talking to your friend. How are you?" Like my mind wouldn't let me do that,
Yeah.
but
And
it's
I I think in that setting, I think what surprises me is I remember when we were in school, like say the photographers were set up in the gymnasium, which I'm guessing is where a lot of the photos take place even
yeah,
still.
yeah.
But say you send, a couple classes down at a time to the gymnasium. That gymnasium, no matter how big or small, would be fucking loud as
Oh,
hell.
they are loud.
But now it seems as though I mean, I would almost imagine you could hear a fucking pin drop because these kids are not verbally interacting with each other.
No, there it's still loud.
Really?
The yeah,
Good
the
morning,
school I
Denise.
was at last Tuesday, I think it was. We were in the gym. It was a middle school, and I mean that ended up being a good day. It was buyers only, so they only brought a few kids at the time. But when we're there for yearbook pictures,
Yeah.
they get their picture made, and then they have to go sit on the bleachers until that group's done, and they're just loud. And I mean they'll be talking, and they get louder and louder. Um, but I mean, like I said earlier, they'll be on their phone the whole time they're talking to each other.
Hmm.
So I mean, it's just the teachers will be like, "Look, y'all need to get quiet. The photographers can't hear." And as soon as the teacher's done talking, they start right back up.
Hmm.
Like, I love my job, but I really don't like when we set up in a gym because it gets so loud.
Yeah.
Of course, we set up in the auditorium a lot too, and it gets loud in there too. It's not as loud as the gym.
See, I don't know if we ever had pictures in the auditorium. We had a beautiful auditorium in our school. I loved being in there, but I don't remember if we necessarily set up for pictures in there. We might have done it for senior pictures, but I'm so far disconnected from any memories from when I was in school that it's hard to recall anything like that. Um, Being that you deal with schools, I'll say on a daily basis, in your line of work, and obviously being that your wife is in the school system, being a teacher, seeing the way that the kids are today that are not your child, or trying, realizing the way that you have to interact with these kids that aren't yours, have you noticed whether or not it influences how you parent? Like, do you still take the old lessons that you learned from your parents and grandparents, or in the age that we're in right now, because it's so different from when we were growing up because of everything that's available to these kids and how they interact? And with your respective jobs, do you see yourself parenting differently based on how you see kids interacting in your daily, dealings with them?
No, for the most part, I still parent her the way I was parented.
Yeah.
I mean, she's got a tablet, so the tablet comes in handy when she does something wrong. We're like, all right, you just lost your tablet for a week or a month or however long. But I mean,
Yeah.
with the technology today, you got to do it a little differently. Like, I don't know if you remember a few years ago, there was that thing. Was it called Momo, whatever it was, that was showing up in videos
Momo.
on
Oh
kids?
my god. That thing was ugly as sin.
We showed it to Adriana and we're like, let us know if you ever see any of these come up on your tablet because she's got YouTube Kids. We don't let her have regular YouTube.
Well, YouTube
But,
Kids is actually worse than YouTube at this point.
well, so far, she watches mainly toy review videos from little
Well,
kids opening
after
toys.
we're done
So,
streaming, I'll fill you in on some of the stuff that's on YouTube Kids. Having
yeah.
been on there since 2012, yeah, there's some wild shit on there. I'm not on
Now,
YouTube Kids. I'm talking about YouTube. But having found out about YouTube Kids, on the regular YouTube, they talk about it. And knowing some of the stuff that people talk about that's on YouTube Kids, yeah, it's some wild shit.
see, she was she had regular YouTube when she first got her tablet. It was before she started school.
Yeah.
I was at work. I was working in Walmart at the time, and I had a phone call, and it was my mom. My mom was over here watching her while we were working.
Hmm.
She was like 3 or 4, and I said, or my mom, I answered the phone, and she says, "Is she supposed to be listening to Eminem?" I'm like, "What?" She's like, she said she was watching music videos, and it was country music, and all of a sudden, an Eminem video was playing. I said, "No, she's not supposed to be listening to Eminem," and I still don't
You
know how
barely
it.
listen to Eminem.
Right? I was like, I still didn't understand how it came in because, like, when we went to the search, literally the only musician in her search history was Dirks Bentley. And that's because Courtney pulled Dirks Bentley up on her tablet.
I'll bet you it was the autoplay feature that, with, hey, this video's next. Hey, this video's next. I'll
It
bet it
might
was
have
the
been.
auto. I hate the autoplay
I
feature.
do too. I have autoplay turned off.
So do I. It's
I can't
annoying as
stand it.
hell.
Yeah.
Even if I like the next video coming up, it's like, don't, don't start it before I want to start it. Let me start it.
Yeah. That's that has always annoyed me because I'll watch a video and then I want to see what people are saying in the comments, and I'm trying to read the comments, and I'll send them on another video.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I've noticed that. Get to some of the comments here. Brittany says, my daughter is the only kid in her class who doesn't have a cell phone. Um, I I mean, I kind of wish more parents were like that, but I understand with the threats that are out there now. I understand kind of why kids have cell phones, but kids don't need a fucking iPhone 22.
no, they don't.
They need a flip phone that only calls mom and dad.
I told Courtney that when Adriana gets her first phone, and I mean, being honest, it could be next school year because she'll
Yeah.
be at a different school. She's been at the school Courtney teaches at since she started,
Yeah.
but next year she's going to a different school. So I told
Mhm.
Courtney, I said she might get a cell phone, but it's going to be a track phone. We're going to put like an hour or whatever on it, however many minutes you can buy.
Yeah.
And like once these minutes are up, you got to find a way to pay for more minutes.
I don't necessarily know if I would approach it that way. I would just pitch it to her as this is only for emergencies, or this is for emergencies only.
I mean, yeah, I'm going to do that, but I'm going to tell her like if you get your friends' numbers and you call them and you run out of minutes, it's on you.
Well, and I'm not a parent, so I shouldn't really speak on this, but when it's somebody that young, I would say let them call the house phone and speak to you that way. Um,
Most people
but
don't have a house phone anymore.
no, and I understand that. We'll get to that in a second. Uh, but say, God forbid, say she's walking home and there's an emergency because there's somebody that shouldn't be following her that's following her. Kids that young should only be using cell phones for emergencies. Kind of like when we used to go up to the closest payphone if we needed to get a hold of a parent in an emergency. Um, is there birds over there?
Yeah, there's one outside my window.
Wow, that was really loud. Holy crap. Um, I mean, granted, we are, simultaneously broadcasting on Twitter, but holy crap, that was kind of ironic. But no,
There it goes again too.
I guess I'm the old fashioned type that kids don't need to be constantly on the phone, because even with my generation, and I mean I know there's only, relatively less than 10 years between us. Um, but even my generation, I think we were on the phone too much as kids, wanting to talk to our friends. I don't think that, you know, I don't think that we were outside enough, because I think that like Gen X, I think was outside all the time. Whereas once it got to my generation, I think we were less and less outside, and I think that's why we've gotten to the point we are today.
See, I was outside all the time, unless it was raining.
Arguably, you're Gen X because you were born in what, 81 or 82?
81.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
we would go outside, and that whole cliche was true. You'd be home when the street light comes on. There was a
right.
street light. Like we lived at the end of a dead end road. There was woods on three sides of the house because we lived out in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
But at the top of the driveway, there was a street light.
Yeah.
We'd go out and play, and my mom would be like, "When that street light comes on, you better be in this house."
Yeah.
So we would look to see when it would start coming on. We knew we had like 2 minutes to get back home.
Yeah.
Of course, the woods were all at our house. Everywhere else was just open land, so we could see
Right.
for a good while.
Um, Denise says 2008 crew, meaning obviously she graduated in 2008. We didn't have fancy phones. We had the flip phones, the only game being Snake. Now, when I had one flip phone. That's the only time I ever had a flip phone was that one flip phone, and I don't remember Snake being on it, but the phone that I had that I specifically remember Snake being on, um, was the Nokia, what we call the Nokia brick.
I was wondering
Um,
if that's what you were going to say.
yeah, and then I love that phone. Like they should have gone with the durability of that phone and made phones that way, because I mean, these phones are as fragile as people's feelings nowadays. Um, yeah, and then Denise goes on to say, "You're not safe with YouTube Kids. I had to take the tablet away from my nephews." And that's another thing when, and not to say anything about, the way people parent. But if you're noticing something that, child relatives of yours are doing that is not necessarily safe for their development in that way, it's I when we were kids, it was always kind of like, if my aunt saw me doing something, not that I ever got in trouble when I was a kid, but if my aunt ever saw me doing something I shouldn't have been, she'd speak up and say something to me. She wouldn't ask my mom permission to scold me or to say something to me. She'd just say it. Nowadays, it seems like too often I hear of, I wanted to say something to him, but I didn't want my sibling or whoever to get mad at me. It's like, it people need to remember the whole concept of it takes a village to raise a child. Um there are just people that from that village sometimes that you need to keep away from the child, but it's just, you need to know that. Um She says YouTube kids introduced my nephews to the show Ridiculousness. Love that show. Rob Dyrdek is a god. Um, you and then she goes. Denise says, "I'd rather them watch Beavis and Butthead." Now, I'm gonna disagree in just a little. I would rather them watch Ridiculousness than Beavis and Butthead, because Ridiculous is nothing more than a modern day America's Funniest Home Videos. The only way that Ridiculousness is different is that um they don't have people send videos into them. They procure videos directly from the internet. um there's no more sending videos into that show. They just kind of find the viral videos all over the internet. Whereas, you sent it into, America's Funniest Videos and Bob Saget and all that. um So I think, I mean, granted, ridiculousness is more like Jackass in the content that they show, but I think it's nothing more than modern day America's Funniest Home Videos. Um,
I've never really watched Ridiculousness.
oh my god, it's hilarious.
Of course, I
You
don't
have
watch much on TV.
access to my, you still have access to my Paramount, right?
Yeah,
It's on there. You need to watch it. It's hilarious. I'm disappointed that they've only put certain episodes on there, especially as long as it's been on Paramount Plus. Um, they pick and choose what episodes from what seasons are on there. Just irritates the piss out of me. Um, oh, I'm trying to catch up on the chat. Denise says, my friend is hard of hearing and was calling hard of hearing was calling her, I don't, I mean, she must mean that somebody was calling her, sweet talking her. I informed her mom that's too young. Oh, okay. I went to Vegas with my friend and her 13-year-old daughter. My friend is hard of hearing, and somebody was calling her, sweet talking her. I informed her mom that's too young. Parents need to be aware of predators, and that's another thing. She says, I found out a stranger was sweet talking her daughter over the phone. Um, I was talking. I don't know if it was something I said in the group chat or if it was something I said in another discussion I was having, but the the concept of teaching stranger danger doesn't exist as it's not as prevalent as it was when we were kids. Like, stranger danger is no longer a thing for the most part, except for with those of us who are very, very old school. Um, and I think with the fact that there are more people that have access to us or kids, I think stranger danger definitely needs to be something they teach rather than some of the bullshit they do teach in school. Um, but I think K through 6 needs to be taught stranger danger because I think those are the most vulnerable. You start to kind of develop a sense of self and a sense of awareness of the world around you when you turn about 13. Um, so you're less vulnerable. But yeah, I think that stranger danger is unfortunately going the way of the dodo, as they say. God, I'm old. um, I don't know why some of the lessons that kept us safe are no longer being taught to the kids that are coming up in the world. And like I said, you have more of a perspective because you're a parent and you work with kids, at least to a certain degree. But what are some of the conversations that you hear when kids are actually talking? What are some of the conversations that you hear that you can't even imagine us having had back when we were kids?
I mean, being honest, it's hard to listen to a conversation when they're all in line because all you hear is just a huge crowd talking.
Oh, kind of like you're at a concert and it's
Yeah,
just, ambient noise.
yeah. The only time you really can make out what they're saying is when they want to start looking at the person getting the picture made and they try to mess with them just to make them laugh and mess up their picture.
Yeah.
And then it's me telling them back up, you know, and they'll back up a couple of steps, and I'm like, no, back all the way up behind this background. If you can see him on this camera, you're too close. Back up. But they keep wanting to move forward and watch them and just try to, especially right now because we're doing spring pictures, so it's not your typical, turn tilt, for the yearbook. It's they can pretty much pose however they want to within reason. There's stuff we can't allow them to do,
Right.
but there are so many kids that want to watch how they're posing just to try to mess with them.
Yeah. Um yeah, trying to kind of get people off their guard and make them do stupid shit, you know.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's just um Denise says ridiculous though some of the things I saw my nephews do from the show. See, kids are going to be kids and I know that that's a very cliche thing to say. They're going to see it somewhere eventually. Um I can't really say that I disagree with. I don't disagree with anything that's on ridiculousness. Some of it I think is just plain stupid, purely because it's not funny to me. But I can't really shit on ridiculousness, um, because we had Jackass. I mean, I know you didn't because you didn't have your. I don't think you had cable back then,
I mean, I've
but
watched Jackass a few times when I'd spend the night at my friend's house. We didn't come
uh,
into the here and now and get cable until, I mean, we had cable in the 80s,
right.
and
But
then we lost it because the dog chewed through the cable line.
I think especially in the 80s, you didn't need shows like Jackass because, Knoxville, Steve-O, Wee Man, all of those motherfuckers came from the 70s and 80s. So it's like whether they were on TV or not, kids were already doing that back then.
I
Uh,
mean, so that house I was telling you about, surrounded by woods, there was a big gully on the left side of the yard. So we would take one of the trees that was there, the branches came down real close to the ground. We took this big long rope tied it around the branch, ran the other end of the rope through the runners on a metal sled and tied it off, put my brother on it and shoved him down the hill
Yeah.
just to see if he got hurt. If he didn't get hurt, we knew we were safe to do it.
Um, yeah, and I know this is gonna. I mean, if this ever can happen, it's gonna take a while to do it. But in the vein of whether or not you see it on TV or amongst your really retarded friend group, because let's face it, I mean, we weren't the smartest batch of kids back then. Um, I mean, even me being who I am, um, I did some stupid shit. But the way that the Hardys started out and got into the industry of wrestling, they were doing really wild shit in their backyard with wrestling.
Well,
Um,
look at what McFoley did to get started.
See, I've never heard of. I mean, I've heard of what Mick Foley's done in the industry, but I don't think I've ever heard of any stories of him prior to the
Okay,
industry.
when he was trying to get into it, he dove off of a house onto like through a table.
Hmm.
And this video, like he had a camera, had people videoing it, and the character, ironically enough, we called Dude Love.
Yeah.
That's where he got the idea to bring him into the WWE whenever he got in there. But he just like the Jimmy Superfly Snuka dive off the top of the house. It might have been on a mattress on the ground, but he jumped off the house onto something.
Uh huh.
And then when he trained to wrestle, those videos started going around. But I mean, he did that dive off the house before he had any training.
Hmm.
So it's I could stand on a house and say I'm going to dive off of it all I want to, but when I look down at the ground, it's going to look like I'm at the top of the Grand Canyon, and I'm not jumping.
Yeah. Um, Along those lines, and I kind of want to get back on track with what we're talking about as far as people melting down over TikTok. Um, my cousin, for instance, when we lived in New York and had the house that my mom had for 16 years, um, the way that the roof of the house and the roof of the garage was placed, um, as skinny and scrawny as this little son of a bitch was, he's not now because he's jacked up. Um, and no, not in the bad way. He's just built because he
Yeah,
works out. Um, but even not having even seen anything like Jackass or anything of that ilk, um, he would still monkey his way up onto either the roof or the literal or the roof of the garage or the literal roof of the house and power bomb into our pool. And like I said, he didn't even watch those shows back then. This was back in um the late 90s, early 2000s, because I think we moved into the house that mom owned for 16 years. We ended up moving in there in 97. Yeah, 97. Because we left in 2013. So that would have been 16 years.
yeah.
Hey, the math that time. But yeah, he would just monkey his way up on the roofs of either one of those or either one and jump off. And it's like, we didn't know where he got the ideas because he never watched any of that kind of stuff. So you never know where these kids are getting it, but they're back then they were likely seeing their friends do it in person. Um, So I don't think that it's necessarily the right thing to do to blame what's on TV. Um, because I think we as adults, you know, if we are in charge of a kid, we have the ability to control what they're watching, um, to a certain degree, I guess. Um, but yeah, they're we have to we have to understand that they're gonna see it somewhere. Like with you, you didn't have it at home, but you saw it when you went to your friend's house.
Yeah.
It's just you know, it's not even a generational thing because every generation is going to find out these things one way or another.
Well, it's
But
funny you mentioned that because at training last week, um, they were talking about if you can't get the kid to do something, just tell them to do a TikTok dance, and then they'll react to it and take a picture of their reaction. And they're like, kids know what TikTok is. And this girl I work with's like, my daughter doesn't know, and she ain't never gonna know. And they're like, yeah, you can say that, but they're gonna find out. They're like, she goes, not in my house. And they're like, yeah, but you don't know what's happening if she goes to a friend's house.
yep,
I mean, granted, right now her daughter's only 4 years old, so she doesn't go to a lot of friends' houses.
right.
But
Um, and I mean, not my mom always knew the parents of the friends whose houses I went down to once I started venturing out on my own. Um, because one of the neighborhoods we lived in, I had friends all up and down the street. So I would be at one of their houses at any given time. So my mom knew where I was. But at the same time, you're not always going to know what happens outside of your home.
right,
Um, even if you have communication with other parents, you're not always going to know because those parents aren't even going to know. You don't always have unless you have your house just littered with cameras, which I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if some parents do today. But unless you have your house littered with cameras where you can watch all angles, you're not even going to know what happens in every nook and cranny of your house
right.
all the time. Um Denise says, "Yeah, just being in my 30s now just hurts seeing these kids' innocence go away faster than in the 90s." Yes, but I don't think it has anything to do with the TV content that they see, even though that's not really a thing anymore because everything is streaming. I think it has everything to do with what this whole stream is actually supposed to be about is the way that kids interact online. And I think that to me is why I'm watching this whole potential of TikTok being banned. I think that's why I'm watching it play out the way it is. Um, because and as as the title of the video or the stream says, it's going to be the thought rebellion. And I know that there are people that are outside of our generation who are not going to understand necessarily what that means. And I didn't actually understand what it meant until a couple years ago. Do you know what it means?
I've heard it, but I've never looked to see what it means.
So you don't. It's an anagram for, or is it an anagram? Yeah, I think that's what they call it. It's an anagram for something. It means that hoe over there.
Okay, okay, yeah.
So
No,
that's why they call them internet thoughts, in based on the content that is on, you know, platforms like Instagram or TikTok or even sometimes Facebook or Twitter. You can understand why that anagram came out, started describing these people.
Yeah,
um
I've got a friend who says it all the time, but I just never asked him what it meant.
yeah, but somebody said something the other day that really stuck out to me, that it didn't initially make a lot of sense to me, because a lot of these teenagers, not even the people that are 21 and older, a lot of these teenagers that are on TikTok sit there and say, "Oh, I don't know what I would do if TikTok was gone, because that's how, you know, I make my living." It's like, you're a fucking teenager, and as far as I know, TikTok doesn't pay shit to any content creators as far as, revenue. And mostly how TikTok creators get paid is through brand deals, and that's why I hate seeing. I'm gonna start name dropping. It probably piss a bunch of people off if they see it. Like, TikTok went from a very creative app where kids were learning how to dance and do funny shit, to a bunch of these creators getting brand deals, and in the midst of all of their content that you see, you think you're watching one of their regular content videos, and it ends up being a fucking ad. Like,
Yeah,
they're doing a promotion for a product. And it's like, I hate being, I don't necessarily want to call it gaslit, because I don't think it's gaslighting, but I don't like being manipulated in that way. Um but the people that are saying I can't have TikTok go away because that's how I make money. No, that's not how you make money. That's just a platform that you use to promote the brands that give you money. And granted, that may be how that brand found you, but look at every other platform. They're adapting the same concept of TikTok onto their platform, which means that no platform is unique anymore. And that pisses me off. Um, like yesterday, Jeremy Hambley, who goes by the quartering, I think I put this in the group chat. He was talking about the fact that YouTube is no longer pushing the long form videos because they've adopted the short form videos in what are they called? The YouTube Shorts, I think is what it's
yeah.
called. And they're starting to do the short form content uh, on there, and they're promoting the shorts, and you you still really don't make a lot of or money off of the YouTube shorts, but YouTube is pushing those so that they can put commercials and ads on there, even though the content creator is not going to make a lot of money. The content creator will make more money off advertisements, off their long form content. Um, but I forget who it was. Oh, I'm not going to mention his name because he's somebody that I follow and follows me back. But um, there's a gamer slash content creator that I follow on TikTok and on YouTube and on Twitch, actually. Um, and he put in his uh, Discord the other day basically this long diatribe meltdown of the fact that he doesn't know what he will do going forward if TikTok gets banned, because he's just broken up about it, this, that, and the other. It's like, and that's why initially I wanted to focus this discussion on the meaning of finding purpose. Um, but looking at how we grew up versus what we, because we're on social media and on all these content creator apps, so I'm not really saying anything and shitting on them in that sense, but we grew up in a time where we understood what finding purpose was. So if you had a kid that you saw was having just an absolute, or even somebody our age that was just having an absolute meltdown, saying that they don't know what they're going to do if an app like TikTok goes away, how would you explain to somebody how they can either need to find or can find other ways of you know feeling a sense of purpose?
That's a hard question. Um,
Well, I mean, how would you tell Adriana?
well, I mean, so it kind of happened, but not really. Um, the student's school email is through Gmail,
Yeah.
and they had the little, I don't even know what it's, the little message, like they can all be on at the same time and send messages back and forth, kind of like Yahoo Messenger was, but it was through Google.
Yeah.
Through So her and her little group of friends were using that to chat when they weren't all at school, and somebody in the school, one of the students was using it and started sending inappropriate stuff to other students. So the principal had the chat shut down. Adriana logged on and couldn't get on the chat anymore, and she was heartbroken. And I told her, I said, look, I said, when I was growing up, we didn't have that. We had to wait until we saw them at school, or we would talk to them on the phone. But
Hmm.
I mean, for me, most of the friends I hung out with lived on the same street. We all just congregated at each other's houses.
Yeah. Every time, yeah, that's another thing that I loved about being a kid is when you wanted to find somebody and you didn't, you couldn't, they weren't home, so you couldn't call them. The way you found somebody was you looked for what house their bike was at.
Yeah, exactly. And
See, that's the thing with me. You could never tell where I was because I couldn't leave my wheelchair outside. I had to bring it in with me.
but I mean, that's why. And you've told me before about how I stay too busy, you know. But that's
I I don't mean that seriously. I
no,
bust your
no.
ass about
Yeah,
it.
I know. But I mean, that's why, most weekends, whether I'm going with my group of friends to wrestling or here lately
Yeah.
it's been to concerts,
Yeah.
I just like hanging out with my friends and going and doing. I can't set when I'm at home. After I'm home for 2 or 3 days, I want to go out and go somewhere and do something.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, being an adult, having to work and all that stuff, I can't really go out and do anything until the weekend.
Right.
But I still prefer face to face, in person interaction
Hmm.
with people as opposed to just doing everything through messages and stuff.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that kids today don't really do or understand much because they're wanting to be glued to their phone or their computer.
Well, I mean, if you think, I mean, our generation, our parents were accused of using the TV as a babysitter.
Yeah.
Um, my mom was never accused of that because she was always, she and I were always doing something. She never just sat me in front of the TV to get me out of the way. Um, I believe there were times. Do you remember? You know that thing that you put babies in, and I don't. It's not necessarily spring loaded, but it's on. You put it in there, and they can rock back and forth. It's kind of that thing that they lay in, and it. I don't know what the fuck it
It's
is.
like a little chair.
It's yeah. It's kind of It's kind of egg shaped. In
What
the
they call
sense
that?
of,
Is it a bumble chair?
I don't know,
Something
but
like that.
at least you know
Adriana
what I was.
had one.
Well, my mom used to put me in one of those, like if I was when I was really little, and if she was, going in for a shower, she would put me in there and put me in front of the TV, I think, until she got back out. But once I was old enough to be interactive in the way that we are now, she never put me in front of the TV to get me out of the way, so to speak. Um, but a lot of the parents of our generation did that. Um, and I would have thought that our generation would have learned from that and actually been more interactive with our kids, our
Yeah,
offspring. Um, because I think that created a lot of social issues and social anxiety that we didn't have as much social interaction with our parents as we probably should have. I don't know.
she says make a daily routine to have 1 to 2 hours of family board. We do that. We have board games and stuff. We sit down. We have family game night.
Yeah, there was a short time where, cuz when when we lived close enough to my grandmother, cuz we were never too far from my grandmother. We were, you know, either literally right next door, um a couple streets over, or if we lived across town, we weren't too far within driving distance. We would always go over specifically to my grandmother's house to watch Jeopardy every night.
Yeah,
And that was the thing that we did. Not that's why still to this day, even with my grandmother having since passed, I still do that. I That is something that I absolutely cherish, is watching Jeopardy.
yeah.
I'm probably a lot smarter than Gen Z because of it. Fuckers. Um, but no, like, and like I say, I know out of a lot of my friends, I'm the oddball out. Whereas, or because of the fact that I maybe did more things with my mom than some of my friends did with their parents. Um, but yeah, it's just I wish that people my age, and even probably some people your age, I wish that they wouldn't have repeated the same habits as their parents. And I think it's hard to avoid that, I think, because it's subconsciously ingrained into you. But it's just, I don't know. But seeing the way that we are unfortunately beholden to the internet, we are beholden to social media, and like there are people that say, "Oh, I'd love to break away from Facebook," or "I'd love to, be able to just disconnect myself." Then fucking do it. It's not that hard.
There was a
Like,
time when I was addicted to Facebook. I was on there every day. I was posting stuff several times a day. But over the past, I'd say about 4 years now, it might be days before I post anything. I'll get on there, just check my notifications, and then I might scroll through the news feed for a minute, and then I'm off of it.
yeah,
And like
and
TikTok, I was addicted to TikTok when COVID happened. That's when I got started on there.
yeah,
But now I get on there, scroll through the videos 4 or 5 minutes, and then I log off. Or like if you send a video to the group chat, I'll watch it and then log off. I'm not
yeah,
on there. Like during COVID, I would get on there for 5 minutes and look up and it's been 3 hours. And I'm like, man, TikTok is really running into my video game time.
Yeah, and I think that's a lot of I will admit that's a lot of my sleep issues is because even though even now with the 3-minute videos, like you go through 60, 80, 100 videos without even realizing it because it's just so like they go by so quickly and you don't realize that you just spent 4 hours.
Yeah.
um so I think overall, I don't think I will be disappointed if and when TikTok gets banned, but I don't think that YouTube is doing the right thing by penalizing their long form content creators by pushing the short form content. And also, they're decreasing the amount of revenue that their creators get now.
Really?
Um, because it used to be a 70-30 split where the creator would get 70% and the YouTube or Google would get the 30%. Now they've evened it out and done 50-50. So they
Mm.
screwed the content creators.
Yeah.
Um, and I mean, we already only get pennies, on the dollar for certain things. So they really put the screws to us with those of us that enjoy the long form content, that enjoy the more conversational aspect of it, versus the people that have no fucking attention span and need to have short form content. Um, Denise was saying something. I want to read that. Says, I see my mom doing what she accuses me of. She's always online watching videos. I'm always telling her, hey, limit your screen time. Um, I need to have, you know what? That is the one, even though I don't believe in marriage, that is probably the one reason I would actually get married is so I could have somebody yell at me to tell me to limit my screen time. Not for the fact that I'm on there. I don't necessarily think I'm on there too often, but I've noticed it's starting to fuck up my eyes. And so yeah, I need somebody to tell me get the fuck off your phone. And even as a 38-year-old, I'm not afraid to admit that. Um, she's almost in her 70s, so it's understandable she's turning senile. Um, yeah, the mental acuity of somebody, and that's another thing that she actually brings up a good point. The mental acuity of somebody who is constantly dialed into electronics, it's going to create more um mental decay in their brain but as they get older, because it doesn't stimulate your brain in the same way that you know what you and I are doing with interacting, even though it's from afar.
Yeah.
um but it decays your brain rapidly almost. And that's another thing I think that more medical professionals need to come out and say, yes, this is what could happen. You need to be more diligent in realizing that you are going to cause harm to yourself in the long term.
See, I think for
Um,
me, whenever we went back to work after COVID,
mhm.
I stare at a computer. Like, I have to look at the computer while I'm taking their picture.
Yeah,
So I'm looking at a computer all day. And I get home and I get on my phone for a little bit. But I think staring at that computer all day is what made me stop being on my phone as much.
and I mean the fact that the fact that there is now a necessity for um lenses in glasses that um block blue light from your phone and your computer. The fact that we are at that point as a society, that tells you we are far too taken by these devices.
And I'm gonna tell you what, those blue light blocker lenses are hell for a photographer.
Really, explain
Yeah.
that, because I've never actually tried them, but explain what that
So
from your perspective.
the kids come up to the camera and you can already tell they got the blue light blocker in them because you can see it when they stand up there and they're in the light. You can see the blue coming across their lenses. So there's a lot that we can do to try to take some of it out, but we can never get it completely gone. So we'll take their picture and there'll be blue up in the corner of the lens. We'll get them to lower their chin and everything where we can't see the light in their glasses anymore,
Uh-huh.
but we'll take the picture and it still picks up the blue light because of the flash. So there's so many pictures that we have to do differently because they'll be standing there and you'll get them in a good pose and everything, but you can see nothing but blue where their eyes are supposed to be.
Mhm.
So it's really bad. Like right now, it's not as bad because it's spring pictures. They can stand the other direction, like they can
Yeah.
turn the other way. But with yearbook pictures where everybody has to be posed in the same position, most of the time we have to ask them to take the glasses off.
Yeah. Um there's this term that I heard probably when I was younger, um of people being a victim of circumstance. And oftentimes, more often than not, it meant that just there were circumstances that, organically happened around you, that you weren't able to avoid those circumstances. And it's not necessarily that you were quote unquote a victim. It's just those circumstances had an effect on you that you really couldn't avoid. But I'm wondering from what your thoughts are. I do believe that we are more so now victims of circumstance, but I think that in today's world, whether people want to admit it or not, I think that we are more so creating those circumstances by the things that we do. So I don't know if we can any longer consider ourselves a victim of circumstance when we create these circumstances that are of affecting us and harming us in certain ways.
Yeah. I mean, not considering, but depending on the situation, like we can do stuff that makes somebody else a victim of circumstance.
Yeah,
Um, but yeah, a lot of the stuff that we do, we a lot of the stuff we do, we're gonna know what the consequences are going to be one way or the other.
yeah,
So people want to do stuff and then try to play the victim card or whatever, but if they did it
yeah.
to themselves, they can't really like claim that.
If we are victims of the circumstances that we create ourselves, I don't think we should be able to call ourselves victims of said circumstance because
Yeah.
we fucking perpetuated it. Denise, if you're interested, because I'm gonna look that up. I've heard of it, Stuttgart's disease. If you're interested, at some point, if you would be willing to come on a live stream with me and Chad, be interested to hear, you know, what that is from your perspective. Like, I mean, it's one thing to read like the medical terms and how they describe it and whatnot, but I'm curious if you'd be interested to come on with us at some point the next time he has a day off and explain how that affects your day-to-day life. We don't need to be victims but victorious to overcome what we've been through. Yeah. um but I think the first step and then I think a lot of the younger generation, especially, because I think they're in for a world of hurt if they don't stop creating the circumstances that they fall victim to. I just wish they had stronger people around them to instill that into them. Um, okay, yeah, that would be fun. All three of us have a discussion one of the next times you have a day off. Um, but yeah, I'm not gonna be sad to see TikTok go away. There is, I don't know how legitimate it is. There is talk from Elon of bringing Vine back because Twitter bought Vine just to kill it, but they still have all of the code of Vine. So there's talk of Elon bringing it back. I don't know if that'll happen, but I do see the potential for it to come back if TikTok gets banned because it'll be at that point it'll be an American owned company, so we don't have to worry about foreign adversaries, obtaining our information. But I think replacing one hypnotic for another is not necessarily the way to go. Maybe bringing Vine back though will keep the short form shitheads on a short form
Platform.
platform instead of letting them go to exclusively to either YouTube or Instagram, say. Um, so maybe it would be a good thing for Elon to bring Vine back, but also if he brings Vine back, he's gonna have to modernize it in the sense that when Vine existed, it was only either 6 or 8 second videos, and granted, that does nothing for the already short attention span of the younger generation right now, but like I said, it'll at least let long form content creators like you and me breathe, and it'll allow our content to breathe. Um, yeah, I think all of us underestimated Elon. I think I mean, I'm fascinated by the things that he wants to do and the things that he's already done. Um, but yeah, I I'll be interested to see if they finally officially go through with it. I will celebrate its demise because, and I've never said, I need to disconnect from this or I need to disconnect from that because I know that at the end of the day, I'm probably going to go back on it the next day. So I've never been one of those people to just sit there and vomit out those words. But I really think that a lot of people need to be forced to disconnect from it, and getting rid of it's the only way to do it.
Well, if they get rid of it, it'll be like when Vine got taken down. If they get rid of it, it won't be long before another platform pops up that pretty much does the same thing, and then everybody will jump on it and make it popular.
And see, the thing is, though, I think I was telling you and Amanda, when Vine got killed, the likes of Logan and Jake Paul came over to YouTube. And at the time, there was no short form content on YouTube. There was no platform for it on YouTube. So they had to adapt and learn how to make long form content. They ended up becoming very successful at it because they already had an audience on Vine that followed them over.
Right.
Um, but, you know, much like a lot of the larger creators that you know were on YouTube 5, 6, 7 years ago, they've since kind of died off a little, and they don't do as much on the platform. They're on to other things. Obviously, no, we know where Logan is, um, but I want in the sense of, to round it out and end, because we've been going for quite some time. I wonder if I wonder if these people that are so hell bent on bitching about TikTok going away will actually be able to find purpose either doing the same thing on another platform, or finding another way to do do something that's more creative. Because I hate to say it, I don't think that, especially now, I don't think TikTok is as creative as people like to, say it is.
It's definitely changed from what it was when I got on it 3 years ago.
Yeah. And I think you got on it in 2020. I did, or
Yeah, I got on it during COVID.
okay, because I know I signed up for it in 2018, but that was when it, it had
Well,
just switched over from
musically.
Musically,
So
and everybody was talking about this TikTok thing, and then I was seeing accounts that had ported over from Musically. They had stayed on the app, um, but it was all these, dancers and shit, and I realized it had previously been Musically.
yeah, so I had the musically account just because a friend of mine that was in a band asked me to start an account.
Yeah, I remember you telling me about
Yeah,
that.
but I never posted anything on my account until 2020 after it was TikTok.
Yeah,
So I guess I've been on it longer, but I just didn't haven't been using it until 3 years ago.
yeah. See, I need to do a deep dive into. I mean, not that too many people watch my content on my YouTube channel right now, anyway. But I really want to do a deep dive into what purpose is, and kind of help people understand how to find purpose outside of the internet in the real world that we actually live in. Because being perpetually dialed in cannot be the way that we survive.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. If TikTok goes away, the only thing that I'm going to miss are um, I've made some pretty good friends on that app.
yeah.
You know, you and Amanda,
Just
my
make
friend
sure you're
Crystal.
following them on other
Yeah.
platforms.
And I followed some of them on other platforms,
Hmm.
but they don't always post or anything. So,
Yeah.
if TikTok goes away, I'll probably end up losing contact with them. But I mean, there's you and Amanda, my friend Crystal out in Texas, and we're all, all of us are on each other's other social medias. So that's the one good thing I can say came out of TikTok was the friends that I've made that I probably wouldn't have had it not been for that app.
Yeah. I love what Denise just put in the chat. We're all here for a reason, not just to exist. That is that is absolutely what everyone needs to come to the realization of. And I think that's where we'll end it. We all are here for a reason, not just to exist. Let's start to actually discover what purpose is and what it means to us. And I know I will see you tomorrow. I don't know when I'm going to be able to drag Chad back on. We'll figure that out and we will let you know. Uh, Other than that, yeah, see you tomorrow morning. Bye, everybody.